The thing that I'm addicted to is when someone has my app on their phone, seeing someone use the thing that I made is like, that's the whole point. Because if they downloaded it and they use it and they like it, so many things had to go right to get to that point. There's some versions of ego that I think can be okay, but if they can take that energy and apply that to a team, then you get like this kind of unbridled kind of like creative chaos. Because I think the alternative is people that are just like happy to do what they're asked. But if you have other people that are like, I'm gonna die if I don't make the best thing, and it's like meaningful to them, this is my magnum opus, or the opportunity to prove everyone else that I'm so good at my thing. If you can get enough of those people, then whatever you thought you were gonna do with them, they actually do more. And that's the best thing that can happen as a leader, is you bring in people that like blow you away. For me, it's like values, and it's like a certain type of person that's just like, is just looking for their chance. And startups are that.
How would you describe your role? What does it mean to lead a design team?
Yeah, so I started at the beginning as the founding designer, which really meant, in this particular case, working with AI engineers and helping them kind of figure out like, what do we do with this technology? Both in terms of what's that product experience? How do we take all this cool stuff and actually apply it to something so that it's useful? So being kind of the voice in those decisions, and then eventually building a brand around like whatever that product experience is. So practically that meant like lots of design, writing documents with ideas, and lots of engineering. So I do a lot of UI engineering as well.
Okay.
So that was the beginning of my job, is just sort of building really and talking and collaborating and just sort of trying to make sure that we're making something good. And it turns out I can't do everything myself, of course. And so then I got to think about like, well, how do I compensate for my skills? Like I have certain strengths and weaknesses. And so how do I find people that balance me out? And so then I started, the beginning of hiring more people, first investing heavily into brand design. So I hired a brand designer that I worked with before, and then just kind of, I don't know, it feels like every other month, just bringing in another designer. And so now I'm at a point where most of what I think about is the team and just like how to help them be successful and sort of multiplying the output of design as a whole.
Tell us a little bit about like what you look for in the best people, and then also in like building a cohesive team.
Yeah, it's honestly one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to think about. Like it's a joy. And do you know the movie Ocean's 11, where they're like gonna do a heist and they're like, okay, we need to assemble the team, and each person is like an expert in some niche, and it's like we got to pull the heist off, so we need all these people. That's just kind of how I think about it, because there's another way to think about it, which is I need to clone myself, because like only I can do this, and so I need to find more people like me. And I think I don't think there's like a wrong way to build a team, but the way that I wanted to do it was to find people that could do things that I couldn't do, because that meant design as a whole could produce many more things. And so then I'm looking for. So therefore, I'm looking for kind of a variety of skills, brand design or illustration or animation or video production, like whatever the skills are. But the cross-cutting elements of that are just values, and the values for me are one, I think practically, okay, we're a small startup. You need to be you need to enjoy the chaos of a small startup, and that means that like, hey, every week or every day, maybe there's going to be a new thing to figure out. We're not going to plan that well. We're not going to, you're going to have to just go with your gut all the time. Communication is going to be messy. All the stuff that just kind of makes a startup actually successful, but like can be stressful as a person working in the startup. Finding people that are down with that and even know what that means. There's that level of values. I could kind of sum that up maybe as grit and ambition. The type of people that I really like to work with are ones that sort of almost have something they want to prove. And so for whatever reason, like maybe they have a chip on their shoulder or they're just really ambitious. There's some versions of ego that I think can be okay. But if they can take that energy and apply that to a team, then you get like this kind of unbridled kind of like creative chaos. Because I think the alternative is people that are just like happy to do what they're asked. But if you have other people that are like, I'm gonna die if I don't make the best thing, and it's like meaningful to them, this is my magnum opus, or the opportunity to prove everyone else that I'm so good at my thing. If you can get enough of those people, then whatever you thought you were gonna do with them, they actually do more, and that's the best thing that can happen as a leader, is you bring in people that like blow you away. For me, it's like values, and it's like a certain type of person that's just like, is just looking for their chance. And startups are that. I think you could be kind of have an ego, but be self-aware. And then it's like, you got to know when to turn it on and turn it off, right? Like, if you're by yourself, you got to believe that you're capable of making something innovative, right? Maybe that's not ego, but let's just call it ego. Because it's not like something that anyone can do. And it doesn't happen very often. So you have to have something inside you that like compels you to do that, or to push a little bit further, or to try to like break the norms or whatever it is.
Tell us about something you're working on today.
Yeah. Well, I can maybe talk about, there's too many things to choose from. Maybe something we just launched, which is this product this new feature called Pages. It's like we've taken all of our original technology, which is our ability to search the internet and our ability to apply AI kind of synthesis to that data. And we've put that inside of a different product, rather than one where you're searching for something or doing research or asking questions. This one's more about you're making something for other people to see. And that can start from research, but it can also just start from an idea. Like, I want to make a page about nuclear fission for 5-year-olds. And the cool thing is, like, you don't even need to know what that content should be before you make that. And so you just are kind of willing it into existence. That's something that was probably impossible like 6 months ago. And now it's possible, and then we built it, and now people are using it. And those are like the coolest things to get to build. And this moment with AI, like that's like happening, I feel like every other week for different companies.
Can you tell us about you and your team's process for building the interface or like the experience of something like that doesn't even exist yet?
So the way that I like to work is, first I'll start with some writing, which is like a hypothesis. Like, if this was possible, it would be useful, or it would solve these problems, or it would help us with growth, or whatever it is. It's really like, I think the best ideas start with like I'm planting a flag, I believe in this thing. And with something like this, it's all about the machine itself. The interface is important, but not really that important, because it's really just about like, can this thing be possible? So I wrote this doc with a vision, and then went to the engineers and, can we do this? And then they say, I don't know. So then the next thing we do is just start building anything, and the closest thing we could come up with, or the simplest version. And then we're just building it and building it and building it until it actually worked the way that we thought it would. And then through that, the only way to evaluate whether it's working is by using it. So we're just making first it was, it made a little paragraph, and then we're like, oh, it would be nice if you could make more paragraphs. And then, it's just, you're using it, hitting things that would make it better. Then you build that. Very, very iterative and fluid, because there's nothing like it. And so we couldn't it wouldn't be very helpful to kind of try to plan it out that much in the beginning. We had to start somewhere and then get something working and then keep using it until at some point we're like, I think this is good enough to launch. And so there's just like kind of a constant polish that happened through thinking about ideas and building them and using them, and just kind of very iteratively building. So the designer that worked on that, he's also an engineer. And so he's just building the UI and building all the animations himself and just trying stuff. And it's like very, very much alive. My process trajectory I studied computer science. And so I started kind of in software by just coding and building stuff, doing hackathons, which is all really messy and kind of exploratory. And you're just making stuff and sharing it. And it's very low pressure and mostly just about you know, hey, can I plug this thing into that thing? And oh my God, it like rendered, you know, one of the things I built in college was a weather app, and it was cool. And I was like, well, it would be cool if it looked really cool. And then, okay, suddenly I'm a designer. And so I kind of started in this very scrappy environment, which is very different than, say, art school, where it's like there's all this pressure and like craft, obsession of craft, and you know, you're getting scrutinized all the time, and you're supposed to produce like a perfect artifact at the end, and there's like kind of an absolute endpoint. I don't come from any of that. Then I went into Google and I worked in a very kind of traditional design process where at the time we were using like Photoshop, and every idea we had, we were supposed to mock up 5 other ideas. And then we'd literally print them out and put them on a board, and then we'd go around the room and, you know, get feedback on the visual design of, you know, buttons and stuff. And I just found that very tedious and slow. And, you know, that meeting only happened once a week. And so if I needed feedback on some ideas, then I would have to wait till the next Wednesday. And so I got very frustrated in that, you know, coming from just, you know, staying up for 24 hours, just, you know, drinking coffee, building all the things that came to my head, and then going into this very like hyper rigorous process. So then when I went to Quora, all the Quora designers also programmed. We were writing Python to build all of the UI, which is like, this is before React existed. And that was kind of novel at the time, but then very quickly became antiquated. But the process for Quora was coming from Facebook, because the founders were from Facebook. And what they learned at Facebook is if you're building a social network, you need to, one, go as fast as you possibly can, coming up with new ideas and building them as fast as possible. And one of the ways to do that is to have the least amount of decision makers, because too many people slow everything down. And you also need to A/B test everything, because you need to kind of figure out what's working, what's not working as fast as you can. And so we had this process where a designer could have an idea, build that idea, and A/B test that idea. So that's one person doing kind of the job that a lot of companies need 3 people for, because and there's a lot of investment in process and values and skills to like make that happen. But that was an asset for Quora, because Quora is a social network, and so we built this whole process around that. So my learning from that is like the kind of value of investment in like what it takes to, one, like the value of going fast, what it actually means, and also how hard it is to do that culturally and like kind of systemically, and also show me that companies can work in completely different ways, and it doesn't really matter. And so what's fun for me kind of going into a startup again is that I get to kind of blend all the things that I liked about my past, and being, you know, the leader, that I can say like, okay, we're gonna, because I think the right way to work is to, okay, we're gonna work on this problem, and then what's the process for this problem? There's not like a Perplexity design process. It's just like everything needs a different, there's a right way to work through different problems. So we get to kind of like decide how we're gonna be.
It sounds like you're motivated by speed quite a bit.
Yeah, I am, because I guess I get bored if I'm not doing something or making something or shipping something. And the thing that I think a lot of people get hung up on is like the very early stages. I made really great mock-ups and I'm done as a designer. And I find that like irritating. I'm like, the whole point is to make the thing for other people. So that's like, I'm addicted to that feeling. And so when we're not getting there, and we're not getting there frequently, then I just feel like we're going slow. So there's I have a personal relationship, I guess, with it in that sense. Turns out that that's like actually really important for the survival of a lot of companies. Not every company needs to go fast. There's like a risk in that, right? But everything that I've worked on is like a free consumer product. And if you aren't constantly building and learning and iterating and adjusting or whatever it is, then you're gonna lose. That's just kind of how it goes. So it's not like the right way that everyone should work, and it comes with all these trade-offs. But it's kind of like, that's how I like to be, and it's the right for our company.
Is there a trade-off between speed and quality, or is that like a false premise?
I feel like my goal is to like, that seems to be the kind of common perspective that people have.
Yes.
And I feel like my goal is to kind of prove that wrong. To an extent. I think like depends on kind of where you want to draw the bar, right? You have companies like Apple who launch something once a year, but the stuff they launch happens to be like, like often very innovative and just like hyper polished. I think for us, it's like everything, we can kind of 80-20 everything, but we do that every week. And then everything, the thing that we 80-20 last week, we then kind of circle back on. And so it's like if you average it out over like a month, the polish happens faster and across more features. If you invest in velocity, you can actually make more things good more all the time, if that makes sense. You're not just like obsessing over one thing and then launching one thing infrequently. You're launching everything with your first good idea and then constantly trying to make it better from there. So it's this like, and to do that requires like like the whole company needs to operate that way. And there's a lot of techniques, I think, in terms of process, in terms of I think designers coding helps a lot because I can find a bug on a Saturday and just go fix it and makes me feel better. But you also can kind of make investments into certain things that like there's lack of polish or lack of quality that kind of comes from there's some common symptoms, I guess. And so you can kind of invest in systems that make it hard to make things bad, if that makes sense. And so that's like investing in design systems, right? If you make it so hard to make a bad button, then you're going to have less bad buttons. And that's just like by investing in code. I think it's important for designers and product managers to be able to kind of think very holistically in terms of like where to find opportunity. Practically, when you know what you're going to work on, there's just things that someone needs to make decisions about. How is it going to work? What's it look like? Who's running the project? Like who's going to make the kind of major technical decisions? So I do think, it's important for everyone to be able to think holistically, but have very concrete ownership within a project, because otherwise it gets very messy. So we can all talk about these things, but who's going to make the decisions? Because one of the most important facets of a fast-moving company is decisiveness and clarity of ownership and these things, right? So it's like we may like reassemble every time. So some projects, maybe I'm the person leading it or driving it, or sometimes maybe it's a product manager. But is a product manager going to do engineering? No, that's not their strength, right? So there is a bit of kind of like moving things around because a lot of stuff is ambiguous, and so someone just needs to make a decision.
What have you noticed is like the friction to building, and if there's any like common thread, what gets in your way?
The simple answer is you want the least amount of people, because then you don't have conversation, you don't have debate, you don't have different ideas. But you can't really scale that by definition. So it needs to be around values. And the companies that I've worked at that feel slow, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of decision makers. And to be honest, like a lot of that's for good reason. I mean, it's not like any company can go fast. There's a lot of reasons why you can't just like let anyone just kind of go build something in your company and ship it. So I think, for many great reasons, a lot of companies go slow. But I think if you really care about it, you kind of have to make these trade-offs. You have to accept like a little bit of risk somehow, and whether it's like quality or redundancy, or you kind of just have to say that, you have to be very clear, like, hey, you don't get to make these decisions. You can't be in charge of this thing. With a small company, it's very easy. There's typically more things to do than you have people to do it. So it's easy to be like, okay, we're going to go fast. And so for us, we can just kind of divide and conquer. Okay, for my design team, there's like one designer that does all of mobile, one designer that does all of web. It's very easy to kind of divide that up. And so anytime a mobile question comes up, whether it's engineering or strategy, or it's just one person to talk to, and then he makes a decision. So that stuff, it's just naturally faster. The things that I do to make us even faster, it's just like making it clear that matters more than anything, more than quality, more than debate, more than feedback, is just being decisive and keep going, because we can always change it next week. The thing is, software is completely mutable. And if you find something, let's say you ship something and then a week later you realize it could be better somehow, users won't remember the thing that was worse. So who cares? Just make it better. and keep going. And especially if it's like a bug or a detail or whatever, like they'll, especially as a growing company, right? You may have 100 users today, but you'll have 300 users tomorrow. So the new 200 users, they only know the new good thing. So you're better off just being able to go fast and keep building new things.
Do you think people individually are more empowered when they can like choose what they use to build things, or is it more about using the latest best technology and making sure the team has that at their disposal, or what is it?
Right,
What is
right.
it about the tooling?
I think maybe brand design is kind of easiest to talk about because it's like, okay, well, do you use Photoshop or Illustrator or Figma or Midjourney or, like there's like an increasingly large amount of things available to you to produce an image, like a JPEG. Like you can do it in a lot of ways. You can start from a lot of places and end in the same place. And so it's really just like, choose your own adventure. Like what's going to either help you do it the fastest or help you kind of visualize something that wasn't available to you before. So that's the kind of flexibility that I would never mandate like, oh, we are a Photoshop team or a Figma team. It just like, it would only hurt us to be so strict about it. But there are tools that I think Linear is an example to me. Like we need to run a business and a company and people need to communicate and be organized and be decisive and it needs to be clear who's doing what. And there's just stuff that like is table stakes for you have a group of humans and they need to like do something as a unit. And you can't like be flexible about that stuff. You got to be actually very, very clear. Like, okay, this person is doing this and we're doing these things in that order. But for how you go about like your individual slice, I think, it's very flexible. There's the engineers that use all kinds of different code editors or, I'll code with one thing and I'll generate some of it on another thing. And that's fine. I think that's the kind of flexibility and exploration I would encourage.